Good morning, everyone. First of all, let me take this moment to thank my party executive and the chairpersons and, boy, so many people that participated in the community night that we just did in Vieux Fort, where we had over 2,000 people attending. The energy, but more importantly, the number of new members that have signed up to the party is very inspiring and encouraging at this point. I know my party will be putting out an official statement thanking all of those persons that were so instrumental in the success of the event we had. This morning is about some very serious business. The Prime Minister has been quoted, sadly, about 3 words. I apologize. Asking me for an apology. But where, in truth, he and the Labour Party should be apologizing to all of us. His same 3 simple words. To apologize to all of us. What is taking place at St. Jude's is a disgrace, is an insult to the intelligence of all St. Lucians. And he and his party are taking a joke too far. First of all, it was allegations of corruption that took place at St. Jude's. 2 years into it, they cannot provide 1 iota of evidence of any corruption. In fact, what was spent in what they call the box, the new building, which is 20% bigger than OKEU, is less than what they have spent to date on the old building. And remember, they had 5 years to complete the old St. Jude's, and they could not do it. And after spending $140 million, when we came into government and found structurally an inadequate building, their own report that they commissioned after this elections has all but confirmed exactly what we had been saying. The report noted assumptions that were being made, that the building could get planning approval, that the electricals could work, that the plumbing could work, that deficiencies in the size of the corridors, the materials that were used on the walls, the security, the safety of the ceiling, the mold problems, all have to be fixed before they can even think of reconstructing the old building. And even if they were to reconstruct the old building, their own estimates know that it's going to cost over $100 million and take over 18 months once they have resolved the snags of the old building. But what are you going to get at the end of the day? What is St. Lucians going to get at the end of the day? A hospital complex made up of 28 different buildings? Who does that anymore? A hospital complex where they cannot even find a place to put 70 beds? 70 beds? Up to now, you all have no plan? The only thing you've done is erected a fence so people can't see what you all are not doing? You speak about horses before hospitals? What was the connection? Just words. And meanwhile, the people are suffering. Not only are we suffering with the inadequate health care that's being provided in the South, and I speak as an MP from Micoud South, representing those persons and representing many other persons in the South who voted for United Workers' Party. Inadequate, not acceptable. In fact, borderline criminal what's taking place. And you want to convince us that there's any sense of urgency? And meanwhile, you have a modern building that was designed specifically to be a hospital. And more importantly, not only a hospital to provide services for the people in the South, but an international hospital to provide services for the rest of St. Lucia, services that are currently not available in St. Lucia, and more importantly, to become a regional hospital. So instead of St. Lucians having to go abroad, St. Lucians could go to Vieux Fort and be supported by their family members here at home and creating jobs here at home. The government is taking all of us for a joke in its program to relieve St. Lucians from the cost of living. The price of fuel internationally has dropped to $70 a barrel, yet the price at the pump is still $17, the highest in the OECS region. Cooking gas has gone from $22 to $44. They've allowed the price of bread to go up, and we know it will never come back down. They've allowed the price of bus fares to go up. People are suffering going to the grocery stores. And instead of going back to the 6-point plan that we made reference to, is back on the books for this year. He said that he would have increased the threshold of non-taxable income to $4,000. He did it to $2,800. The refund that he promised fishermen on the gas tax. He promised the full $1.50. Today, we're charging more. And what is he going to do? Say he's going to give back a portion of it to the fishermen, and then he's going to turn around and charge a 2.5% tax on goods and services? I think that there was a Calypso song, 2 prime ministers in the country. It obviously not exclusive to Kenny Anthony. The $1,500. And remember, when we gave the monies during COVID, the economy had contracted by 24%, and more importantly, tax revenue had dropped by almost 40%. It was difficult. Yet look what we did as a government to support the people. And here it is that income tax revenue is at record levels. And simply helping people survive what is taking place in the world with inflation. Nothing. Just empty words. And when it was revealed, after they cried and said how difficult it was and what they were doing to subsidize gas and cooking gas, to find out they actually made $70 million more than they had projected. And in this year's budget, they are projecting an additional $70 million more. Where's that money coming from? What's that money going to be used for? They owe an apology to our farmers. After all the things that we did to try to save the banana industry, the collapse of Windfresh, what was taking place with the FTO, to improve the processing. FAO, my apologies. FTO. I thought it was FTO. Free Trade Organization. That used to function and doesn't function anymore. But NFTO has failed the banana farmers. And the intervention that we were making was to strengthen NFTO. Not weaken it, but instead they have allowed now the banana industry to disappear. The banana industry cannot survive on the regional market by itself, and more importantly, cannot survive in selling bananas to Trinidad, in which we cannot get our foreign currency. And anyone knows that the backbone of our fresh produce industry in this country is bananas. And without farmers earning supplementary income from the banana sector, it does not make it viable to go out and grow anything else. And this was monies that were complementing people's household income. This was the backbone of the rural sector. He owes an apology to the small contractors. Construction industry has literally gone to zero. And the only works that are being done by one contractor. And that one contractor is self-sufficient to the point that he makes his own wheelbarrows. So hundreds of trucks and construction equipment that's owned by small businesses and individuals in this country are sitting dormant, only costing them money instead of earning money to augment their incomes. The Prime Minister owes all of us an apology for Hunor International Airport. When he came into office, he found a design that was already funded, contracts already issued, work had already begun. Again, allegations of corruption. None that he's been able to confirm. Nothing that he's been able to show. Wants to make allegations that we cannot afford it. The $35 that was being collected on the head tax and going into a lockbox in a bank in the United States was more than sufficient to complete the project. It is an embarrassment that an airport that should have been completed already, that they cannot even decide what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. The pre-clearance facility that we were negotiating, now my understanding is that Barbados is going to get it. A new international airport that would cause confidence in investments in this country, because the hoteliers would see the capacity of the country growing. Now, what confidence should they have that this government cannot even get that work done? The Prime Minister, and in particular Minister of Infrastructure, owe all of us an apology for the embarrassment that is taking place at the Millennium Highway. You don't have to be a contractor to know that something is wrong. The same persons that want to make all kinds of allegations against other people, they need to turn their fingers and look in a mirror at themselves and ask themselves the same question. You found a project already proved, ready to go. 2 years has gone by, you cannot finish the road, and all of us are suffering. You don't think you owe all of us an apology? You don't think you owe all of us an explanation? In fact, somebody should be fired. The same minister cannot get the airport done. The same minister is sitting there where he wants to give away $400 million of revenue to the GPH group for $40 million of investment. What is this government doing? It is an embarrassment, and it is curtailing the development of this country. Very concerning to us is that you had a government that said continuously transparency and accountability. And I remember when I was Prime Minister, and I used to say to the Leader of the Opposition, you don't have to wait to be Prime Minister to show the country that you're serious about transparency and accountability. The Rover Gate, a member of your own government who used his office to benefit his brother, allowed his brother to get a car duty-free in the UK, turned around and then used the High Commission's name, the name of St. Lucia, with nobody's permission, to put the car in the name of the state? Who gave you permission to put it in the name of the state? How did you get around the Financial Act that says once you have an asset of the state, the only way that that asset can be disposed is through the Ministry of Finance. You knew all of that. You knew that the appointment of Jufali was a farce. It was simply to give him immunity. And how did Jufali benefit? As an ambassador, he got a Lamborghini duty-free. He got a Rolls Royce duty-free. 3 staff members were given work permits in the UK because he was the ambassador. And he got his immunity. What did St. Lucia get? We got an account called the St. Lucia IMO account, of which Jufali and Ernest Hilaire were the co-signatories on the account. No permission was given or sought to open up the account. We have that report from the Auditor General. The Ministry of Finance was never advised that monies were transferred into the account. Never. And permission to spend the money was not given. And up to today, we don't know how much of that money went into Ernest Hilaire's account. We know that some of it did, but we don't know how much and why. All those were questions that could have been answered before the elections. The minister's account. The minister admitted, there's documentation to show that the board of the NLA agreed to set aside monies and gave the minister the authority to spend the money. And it was how those monies were spent. Millions of dollars to build sporting facilities, changing rooms. No contracts, no tendering. And the persons who got the contract, some of them were candidates with the Labour Party. That's the transparency. That is the accountability. You have now turned around and agreed to bring in Richard Fedrick to your cabinet. Your government, your party made allegations that because he did not have a diplomatic visa, that he should not be a minister. If you have changed your mind, share with us the news. Why? What have you found out that was different from before? And now you have the situation where the minister has admitted himself, nobody else made the allegation, he admitted it, that a local bank has closed down his bank account. No explanation. And now you have the same minister involved in the bonanza. And you want to say that the minister did a good job of showing that he was not involved? The Housing Authority Act says that in order to dispose of an asset, it requires the minister's approval. Whether you want to accept that there was a valuation done in 2013 for $6.7 million, that's up to you. The evidence shows there was. But how can Mikey Pilgrim, John Peters, Richard Fedrick, Philip Peer, all of them not know that when you are selling land there for $27 a square foot, something is wrong? You need somebody to tell you that there's something wrong? That you're selling the land to a young lady who just has a job and she finds 2.7 million EC dollars to pay for the land, and you believe that she has the capacity to develop the land? Where's the plan? Up to now. Stop mama-guying everybody in St. Lucia. Come out clean with the truth. Stop putting the blame on everybody else for what y'all are doing and the embarrassment that y'all are causing this country. And you can feel it everywhere you go in this country. People are getting angry because every day there's more questions and no answers. And all there is is deflection, propaganda, blame game. We have a situation at CIP. We created an economic fund. The economic fund was ring-fenced. Ring-fenced means that it was separated from government. So the monies do not go into the consolidated fund. And to make sure there was accountability for that money, the board was given the autonomy over the funds. It's not even 1 month the government was in office and they were amending that fund to say all the projects that are approved by cabinet. So if that's what you're going to do, dismantle the economic fund and put the money into the consolidated fund. By putting it into the consolidated fund, there has to be accountability. It means that the accountant general, the Ministry of Finance, and the legal process of going through a budget of recognizing how much money we have and what the money is going to be spent on is done. We have an economic fund. 2 years, no report. Nobody knows how much money has gone into the account. Nobody knows how the money was spent. My understanding, it's over $91 million of money that was earned by selling passports in St. Lucia that is going unaccounted for. And you call yourself a government of transparency and accountability and of democracy? The Prime Minister's daughter is hired at CIP. Was her position put out to tender? Was it made public? I'm all for my siblings or family members succeeding in St. Lucia, but on merit and a transparent way. Now, even more information is coming to us, brings more questions to the table. So we have a situation where a company, Turquoise Citizenship Incorporated, was established. The directors of the company are Savita Chandler, who is attorney at law, but is also the deputy registrar of the High Court. And the other person is Kara Kodra, who is also attorney at law, but she's employed as a lawyer in Lauren Theophilus's law firm. The same Lauren Theophilus who is the chairman of CIP. So the question is, did the board not know that? Did he recluse himself from the meeting when it was approved? The minister, Ernest Hilaire, when he signs a certificate for this company to be able to be an agent for CIP in St. Lucia, a registered agent for CIP in St. Lucia, did he not remember that this was a lawyer in his chairman's law firm? All the documents presented for filing by Lauren Theophilus Chambers. So again, that's public information. Where's the transparency and the accountability? St. Lucians are struggling to get jobs in this country. St. Lucians are struggling to keep their businesses alive in St. Lucia. But it seems that if you're not a family, a friend, or a comrade, you can't get the special discount. You'll remember the same lawyer, another lawyer who is Ernest's friend, who is chairman of Tourism Authority, went on a TV show to say that when Ernest Hilaire was the High Commissioner and he got the car, it was no different than going down to Point Seraphin and finding a friend with an airline ticket. Now, I meet St. Lucians who say to me, he got away with from the UK. Who doesn't do that? And my answer to them is simple. If we are going to accept that as being normal, then let's make it available to all St. Lucians. If I wanted tomorrow to go and buy a car in the United Kingdom, let me go to the High Commission, the St. Lucia High Commission, let them buy the car in their name. Let them benefit, let that car benefit from the 12.5% duty-free discount in the UK. And then for the High Commission to put it back in my name. Everybody gets it. But what is going on in this government is that they are selective about who is getting what. And more importantly, there are questions as to the legality of some of these issues. The same Codra lawyer gave a declaration that she is the beneficial owner. When was the government, and in particularly Lawrence Theophilus and the minister, going to tell us that this was happening? And what makes this matter even more egregious, it is my understanding that there is a moratorium on any new companies being registered as a CIP agent in St. Lucia. So was it that the moratorium was put on before and an exception was made for this company? Was it that this company was approved and the day after the moratorium came in? I don't know. I don't know the young lady. But all I have to say is if she is an employee of Lawrence Theophilus in his chambers and he is the chairman of CIP, all of us must ask the relevant questions. Now, to avoid people thinking the worst, say it up front. The Bonanza land. Why didn't you say it up front? No. 1 week before the GPH deal is made public, the land was sold. How we as normal St. Lucians not to be suspicious of that type of behavior? Nothing was made public. I thought if you sold the land, you would be excited that the housing authority got extra money. Today, the housing authority is taking that same money to build a building on the chaussee. Where's the transparency? Who got the contract? Who was the engineer? Who are all the subcontractors? How much money is being spent? These are important questions that we must ask. Because this government has done everything to undermine any trust that we can have in them. Because when issues are brought to their attention, it's deflect, it's to blame, it's always somebody else's fault. How many allegations of corruption have been made about my government? No proof of nothing. The same Minister of Infrastructure who sat in my cabinet for 5 years and supported the policies of my government up until the night before we announced elections. He was on TV supporting those policies. So at no point did he make public or even to us that he had concerns. In fact, there's a video of him supporting wholeheartedly the HIA airport and the process and explaining why the new road was built. Because the terminal was in a new location. All of those things were explained. But the moment now you become your independent person, it's not good enough for you to go and put your own plans out. You must now tarnish the reputation of people that you worked with for over 40 years, a party that supported you for 40 years. And we're not supposed to say anything? It's shameful. It's disgusting. It's unacceptable. And then meanwhile, You cannot explain why HIA has not started. You cannot explain why the conditions of the roads the way they are today. How is it when you were a Minister of Infrastructure under my government that we did over 230 roads on time and budget? You're now presiding over the Millennium Highway, and it is a disaster. I can't even imagine how much money it's going to cost the people of this country. And more importantly, the cul-de-sac bridge cannot be finished because they have not finished their work. And that's not to talk about the inconvenience and the damage that's being done to people's vehicles. How many hours have been wasted? How much frustration and stress has that road caused the people of this country? The impact it's having on the businesses. After I've said everything, the part that I cannot accept, and I know that St. Lucians themselves are getting more than angry, is this idea that you're going to introduce a 2.5% tax on services and goods in July 1st. And up to now, you cannot even explain how the tax is going to be implemented. And that's almost irrelevant, because the idea of wanting to impose higher taxes at this time, when you can see the results. But you see, when you start believing your own propaganda, you'll know the Prime Minister came and said, this is the lowest rate of unemployment we've had since 2010. I showed. That's a lie. The Social and Economic Review speaks to it. The box that they make reference to, the cautionary note. What's the cautionary note say? It says that the Statistics Department collaborated with ILO to look at their process that they use to determine the unemployment. That the ILO's definition of unemployment is different to St. Lucia's. And if they use the ILO's methodology, it would be a lesser rate. It also says that because of COVID, instead of being able to go house to house, they had to make phone calls. And the result of that cautionary note is on page 110, table 31, and it says, note, see box 1 on the CSO's cautionary note, which is what I just read to you. On the LFS result for 2022, which advises that these estimates are not comparable to the estimates for previous years. Yet you still want to go and fool the people? Propaganda? How many examples? When you have ministers in their government want to say that 2019 we were going into recession. 2019 we had the highest arrivals in the history of St. Lucia. St. Lucia was on the verge of a massive takeoff. And what's the evidence? Because the GDP contracted by 0.1%. And we said to you, it's because the GDP is measured on a fiscal year, not an annual year. Fiscal year meaning from April 1st to March. And by January, February, and March of 2020, we were already feeling the impacts of COVID. And still the economy only contracted by 0.1%, which means that you had no growth. That's in effect what it means. And on that basis, you want to say that the economy was already in a recession? We forget what we inherited? It was their words that said what? Something went wrong. And we couldn't borrow money anymore. And I'm alerting St. Lucians that at the last House sitting, when they came to permission for the terms to borrow money and also to roll over the bonds, on a very alarming piece of information, that interest rates may be as high as 7%. So what does that mean? In order to convince people to buy your bonds, you're having to pay them a higher interest rate. That's a disaster. It's a telling story. So I'm going to stop at this moment and ask the media if they have any questions, but I have to say to you that I'm sensing anger and frustration in this country. And this government needs to change its way and to take accountability for what it's doing and how it's doing. And I repeat myself, if you want to see crime being reduced in this country, if you want to see things get better in this country, it starts in your own cabinet. There's no explanation as to what has happened as to why Richard Fedrick is in the cabinet in the first place. None. The Bonanza land, we need an independent investigation, because it's my understanding that the board did not know of the existence of the 2013 evaluation. Not that that should be an excuse. My understanding is that SLASPA's board members didn't know that the land was being offered to them. And the decision to sell it to the young lady without putting it out to tender, there needs to be an explanation. So asking the minister to investigate himself is not acceptable. And we got exactly what we expected. There needs to be an independent investigation into this matter. There needs to be an independent investigation into what I've just revealed about CIP. How has the money been spent in the economic fund? How much money has been spent? And the money that was spent, what's the accountability? Because it's not part of the government's expenditure. So who are they accountable to? What processes they're using? Because the fund is not supposed to be an implementing agency. It's supposed to be a custodian of St. Lucia's monies. There needs to be an independent investigation into this company, Turquoise. Is it a conflict of interest? And in fact, if the person is a lawyer in Mr. Theophilus's chambers, did he recluse himself from the meeting? Those are very important questions. Did the minister do his own due diligence in signing the certificate? Is there a moratorium? And there needs to be an independent investigation into this matter. And lastly, is the Prime Minister needs to come out early, I believe, and reverse his decision on this 2.5% tax. The country cannot bear it. The more vulnerable people in our society cannot bear it. What is taking place at OKEU is disgraceful and unacceptable. And the idea that you're saying it's the Millennium Board that's responsible for it is a joke. Can't give people a basket to carry water. And that is what we've said from day one. Where is the money going to come from? You want to come and talk about universal health care and all you're giving is some maternal support, which everybody appreciates, but it's limited to where? To the healthcare centers. And compare that to healthcare insurance, where you would have had your insurance card and you could have accessed healthcare both from the public sector and the private sector. People who have babies have their private doctors. You're going to deny them? They're going to deny them that relationship? And we have to now depend on the government providing enough resources to those healthcare centers to maintain the equipment and to make sure that they're servicing? So what you've given is nothing. And this government is not addressing those issues. The march or the walk for democracy, the community night that we had, the forums that we're doing are growing. I am warning this government that the patience of the people in this country is growing thin. And this idea of telling people or telling me and the United Workers' Party, we lose, okay? And that 2 years later you still want to go and celebrate your victory. That you all need to wake up to the reality. that yes, people elected you by the slimmest of margins. Don't fool yourself about this 15-2 in the House. That's the only place that you have that kind of majority. But in the public domain, the People's Parliament, you do not have that majority. And in fact, I would say that you are a minority government in the People's Parliament in this country. And that majority's voice is growing and their patience is low. And what we want is more accountability and more responsible government that is sensitive to the people's needs in this country. And stop having a system where it's only the comrades and the selected few that are benefiting from government. Government is supposed to be for everyone. Thank you. I spoke about
the CIP and international passports. What about the passport solutions? You've seen a disaster in the passport.
Again, this speaks to the incompetence of this government. The question is about what's going on currently with the passports, the impact it's having locally on St. Lucians, as well as new applicants for CIP. You knew it. How is it you can't fix the system? And if in fact that these allegations that there are company or companies that are taking $650 from people and getting the passports in the 3 days, that's more damning because it speaks to transparency and accountability. So it says that you can actually deliver the passports on time. So why is it not happening? And how is it that nobody from government has stepped in? Where is the minister that's responsible? Where is she? Always hear her voice in Parliament, loud. Where's that anger? Where's the resolve that she says that she's known for to get this matter resolved? It's 2 years, it's not just today. And it's getting worse, not better. And is it impacting solutions? So you can get on a plane and travel wherever you want to, because it seems that every time they have an opportunity to travel abroad, they do. But when you want to improve the standard of living in St. Lucia and to make St. Lucia more international, you're criticized. And now St. Lucians who also want to travel but need their passport, there's no urgency. But there's an urgency for you to travel. That's the problem. And that's what I'm saying too. The anger that is building up because these questions are unexplainable. There's no transparency, there's no accountability, and when you look into it, it's almost coming across as being deliberate. And deliberate to do what? To favor certain people. So on the surface of it, the Prime Minister's daughter getting a job at CIP, okay. But when you start adding up everything else and how difficult it is for anybody to get a job, and then you find out that the job was not put out, people get upset. And that's what I'm saying. The anger is almost palatable in this country right now. And this government needs to wake up.
I wanted to ask a question. So one in relation to the CIP issue with office. I think one of the arguments I've heard is in relation to
You want to pass this up?
when it was first posted, this thing about the young lady looking at his office, is that a comparison was actually drawn between, I think, your wife and being a CIP agent under your administration. My question is, was she an agent, and is she still an agent, and can these two things become?
My wife's firm applied to be an agent transparently and in front of everyone. Okay? I was not the chairman of the board. The chairman of the board was a gentleman called Ryan DeVoe. So the entity that was processing it was them. Now, you have a situation where it's a lawyer in the chairman's firm. And as you all remember, I removed myself as much as possible as the minister responsible. All I did was, end of the day, was sign certificates on the advice of that board. Okay? So it's the board who would have made that approval, not me. In this situation, where you have a supposedly moratorium. So how did the application come in? Is there a moratorium? Because I know that there are companies who've applied and have been told that there was a moratorium. So I want to say that I have that evidence. Did he recluse himself from the meeting? Can we be satisfied that if you have an agency in the chairman's office? So it's not for me to say categorically. I'm just saying, so when the chairman is meeting new agents and people want to get favoritism with the chairman, do they go through that agency? So again, this is where, the Labour Party wants to always blame people, deflect. Here it is that a lawyer in his firm, and the bottom of every document, that the filings were done from his firm. He already was chairman.
Okay, the other question is related to the announcement about the transition of the respiratory hospital into the multi-purpose medical facility. I know it has been a plan of the government of St. Lucia, we started with the Kenyan administration to transfer the Chastanet Health Center to over there. So I wanted to get your thoughts on the current plan. I know it's been changed up a bit with not just the transference of the proposed transference of Catholic Wellness Center's operations to that polyclinic, but also the operation, I think, of the secondary care facility of the OAKU hospital. One of the reasons they said that they were bringing this facility over is because of the lack of beds at OKEU. Your thoughts on that, and also the financing of all these different medical facilities.
So I'm going to answer that question, but there's some information that's been given to me. So again, this is where we speak about the blame game instead of being accountable. So I've been reliably now informed that Duboulay and Anthony, which is the name of the firm, got their license in 2015. So it would not have been under my administration. Okay? For the CIP. This is what I'm saying. This is the continual half-truth games that the Labour Party continues to play in this country. And I, for one, I am fed up with it. And I know that many St. Lucians are now, every single time that they want to blame somebody for something, or they're under pressure to be accountable for something, they want to blame other people. So to answer your question, from the time that we were building OKEU, the question as to what you were going to do with Victoria comes about. Clearly, because the building is there and is being used as a hospital, one would automatically say, you know what, let me make it into the healthcare center, a polyclinic, right? Because the way that the healthcare system, the strategy behind the healthcare system in St. Lucia was that your main hospitals have minimum beds because people are supposed to go to your polyclinics and your healthcare centers first. And then after they've had the operations and they've recovered, then they go back to the healthcare centers and the polyclinics. Because maintaining a high service level bed, which is what you're doing at a hospital, is extremely expensive. Right? So that's why simultaneously to building OKEU, you were supposed to have fixed up all the centers. When we came into 2016, no plan was there to move into OKEU. There was a plan, but there was no money. And that was a problem. Yeah? And simultaneous to that, no work had been done to improve and strengthen rural healthcare services. Now, there's an argument that moving the polyclinic to Victoria is disadvantageous to the people in the Castries Basin. because the chaussee is much more accessible. The issue in the chaussee has always been security. And that's why the intention was to build a police station right next to the health clinic. Now, if you build the health clinic in Castries in Chaussee, what do you do with Victoria? Does it become a specialized area? What do you use it for? Now, during COVID, it became urgent that we move into OKEU because we had no place to have a respiratory center. So the goal was make Victoria temporarily into that and then move into OKEU. But as I said repeatedly, I mean, I asked, go back and read our press statements. It was challenging to move into OKEU. The operating procedures were inadequate, weren't ready. That's why we had to bring in the Indian group. Bringing the doctors and the administrators into St. Lucia during a COVID period, who were coming all the way from India, was even more complicated. And when people say, well, why didn't you go to Martinique? You think we didn't go? That was the first place we went to. Martinique couldn't help us. They were already overwhelmed in their own healthcare systems. And more importantly, I'm not scared to say this, the type of administration that Martinique has is well funded. I'm not sure that that is what's going to work for St. Lucia. Whereas with the Indian, they know how to provide low-cost healthcare, but a high quality. Proven. And so to me, bringing them in was much more relevant to us. But the government will tell you we spent $7 million. So you're telling me spending $7 million to improve the quality of healthcare at the tertiary level is not worth it? And that in addition to the work that they were doing at OKU, and remember, OKU falls under the Millennium Heights. And what we've said is that the St. Jude should be part of Millennium Heights. Why? So you have one accounting firm. You have one marketing firm. You have one maintenance firm. You're making sure that you're buying the same level, and there's a synergy between the two. Because that's when you start reducing the cost of healthcare in our country. And this is when you've heard me say repeatedly to the minister, explain to the public what is universal healthcare. Universal healthcare, as I know it, means that the state is going to undertake the cost of all the healthcare measures. How are you going to do that? How?
Can I just, now that you mentioned, let me just ask a question. How do you feel about, what do you agree with the ministry's new stance that they are no longer responsible for the hospitals in St. Lucia right now? They are policy makers and the hospital doesn't have statutory. Do you agree?
No. The intention is that the Ministry of Health under the new health system is supposed to be the policymaker and also supposed to be the regulatory agency. It couldn't happen before because the main ministry would be regulating itself because OKEU and all the healthcare centers are being operated and run by the Ministry of Health. Now, by making that separation, you can, but the government has a fundamental responsibility: funding. Where's the money going to come from to pay for OKU? That's why a healthcare insurance. Healthcare insurance means that we all contribute. It was a mandatory healthcare insurance. Every single St. Lucia was mandated to have healthcare insurance. And what did we say? Government would pay for the elderly. Government would pay for the vulnerable people in our society. But everybody who had a job would contribute. And that money doesn't go into the general coffers of government to be mixed up with all the other monies and be paid out on a cash flow basis with government. That would kill it. So it's to create it like an insurance system. So when you go to the hospital, you put in your claim, and when you put in your claim, the money then is paid to the hospital for those operating costs. And it was agreed. Government would pay the salaries of all the persons, government would pay the utility bills, and government would pay the capital expenditure. Now, if we're going to do that, you have to put in an efficient system. You have to put price controls in now for medical care in St. Lucia. So the insurance companies know what the limitation is going to be. There has to be an oversight of the doctors and what they're prescribing. Are they over-prescribing? Is there collusion? But the difference is, and I want the women of this country to appreciate that, is when you had your own insurance card, you could go wherever you wanted. You go to the private doctor, you can go to the healthcare, wherever you wanted to go. This system that they're trying to introduce is confining you to the healthcare centers being funded by government, and now they're telling you they're not responsible. So who's going to maintain the quality? Who's going to make sure that those places are functioning properly? That's my problem with this government. They've lost an understanding and appreciation of what their role is. And I have to say to you, I also think that civil society and many of us have lost sight of what our role is. The role of governing the country does not belong exclusively to the ministers. It belongs to all of the senior servants who are hired and paid for by taxpayers' money to do their job and do it properly and to protect the people of this country. It is civil society in which policies and the management of the state impacts them to be part of that process. And healthcare is a critical one. This government is going backwards in healthcare. This government is going backwards with education. You're telling me you give kids an iPad where we download all of the books onto one device. It costs you $250 EC dollars a year. If that book, a new edition comes out, it is automatically updated. So it means your child is not being left behind in any way. The devices are working tools for the teachers, keeping track of homework. As a parent, if I want to go and see how you're interacting with my child, there's a constant record that's kept. That the links to the internet are limited to educational sites. And so if you're reading a chapter and there's a reference, the link is there. And eventually what we wanted to do was to film the best teachers, the best Form 4 teacher in English, the best Form 4 teacher in math, the best Form 4 teacher in biology, the best Form 4 teacher in physics. And film that person so that any time a child can go back and see a lecture on any chapter. What do we solve at that point? That we create a quality education. This idea that you have to rush off to this high school, secondary school, because that's the best school. And if my child doesn't make it there. I mean, I saw that taking place with sports. Right? If you didn't live in Castries, you couldn't play national sports in St. Lucia. So here it is, we're going to solve the problem, and this government wants to come and mama guy everybody, lie to everybody again, and tell you, oh, I'm giving you a laptop. A laptop with nothing in it. It has no relationship to the curriculum. And that's what I'm saying, is many St. Lucians now are starting to discern the differences in policy and feel aggrieved about the lies.
Okay, but the justification for going back to the laptops was that updating the books would have been too expensive for government on a yearly basis. So, as somebody was being done, speak to us about the price. Is it cheaper to give every child a laptop as opposed to paying the upkeep for continually updating those books?
It's not about cheaper. It's about improving the education system. How many people have we met that every year that they have to go and find $1,000 for new books? And kids couldn't get all the books. For $250, you're getting all the books. Government gave them the ebook. Government set up a company here to repair the ebooks. There was an insurance process that if the first book was damaged, that they could get the first book replaced. But more importantly, it was the effectiveness of the education system. So let's take COVID. If you had the ebooks, classes could have continued. And you're now taking teachers that are spending way too much time in administration and not enough time teaching. The two systems are not even comparable. And again, you're giving them a laptop to do what with? One time? So how much does a new laptop cost? 250 US. So I'm saying to you that it's not even about what's cheaper, what's much more functional and integrated, and more importantly, you're teaching kids on a platform that has now become university acceptable, which is an e-platform. So learning to type, learning how to do research, learning how, I mean, look, we've all had to master the art of Zoom and doing meetings on Zoom. So the ebook was already facilitating all of that. So I don't even know where the comparison is.
Last question from me. During his address in the House of Parliament, the Prime Minister made an allegation to a Panama account. Can you tell us what that's about?
No idea. I'm accustomed to that now with Labour, that every time that they want to, they're under pressure, they just start saying things, right? And then as time goes by, there's never any fault on it, okay? So I can say to you, I know that I ran a transparent government. Am I perfect? Nobody's ever perfect, okay? In hindsight, would I look back and want to do some things differently? Yes. But I have to also ask, what was my intention? What was I trying to do? You know, so when you have this whole thing about the vaccines, what is that? Alan Chastanet didn't go and make the decision to get the vaccines by himself. That was the Ministry of Health, the CMO, the Ministry of Finance, the Attorney General's office. Everybody was involved. And this idea that people believe that when you sign a direct award, that that's somehow overriding all of the system. No, the direct award simply means that a ministry has made a request to say that they want to give a direct award instead of going out to tender. And there has to be a justification for it. So what was the justification? It wasn't to say, we had hundreds of people offering to sell us vaccines every day. Every day we heard about scams. So that's what I'm saying to you. When this offer came to me, came to the government of St. Lucia, through me, first persons I called were the two other prime ministers to find out if they were involved. Because there was a minimum purchase of 1 million vaccines. St. Lucia couldn't buy 1 million vaccines. Even the 300,000 we couldn't buy. That's why we were buying 100,000. And what was the frustration? Every day we were being told that we were getting vaccines. Every day. That's why I'm so grateful to the Indians because and Prime Minister Modi. They came through. Not enough, but they did substantially more than anybody else. Our request to the US government fell on deaf ears. Our request to the Canadian government, deaf ears. Our request to the British government, deaf ears. And everybody kept on talking about this system of procurement that they put together, of which we couldn't get anything. And meanwhile, we want to open up. And it's my responsibility as the Prime Minister of this country to protect the citizens to the best of my ability. If in fact everybody was vaccinated, of which I did not force people to, but if everybody was vaccinated, then you can be much more aggressive in your reopening of your economy and people could get back to work. So less than half, or just a little bit less than half of the money has been paid back. The Prime Minister needs to tell us why he's not received the rest of the money. It's in his hands. There's legal recourse that he can take. Why is he not taking the legal recourse? Don't come here and want to blame me or anybody else because that suits your narrative. I can see with all the statements he makes, it's almost like they want to forget that there was COVID and the impact that COVID had. The policies that we put in place, the sacrifices we made, benefited St. Lucia. The fastest recovering economy in the entire Caribbean, and one of the fastest recovering in the world. And instead of building on that, they're undermining it. Construction is being slowed down. And again, the St. Lucians were led to believe, made to believe, that the monies that were used for the road projects were monies that the World Bank and the IMF lent us for other things. I want to dismiss everybody from that notion. The monies that we got from CDB, World Bank, and the IMF at concessionary levels was for budgetary support. And it's not difficult to calculate. If in fact salaries is $44 million a month, debt financing is $30 million, and operating the government is $30 million, and the government itself was only collecting 50. And we were not allowed to use the monies for debt financing. So the 50 million went to pay for the debt financing and to help with the operating cost. And the monies we got from those other institutions paid civil servant salaries and paid for the operations of government. The monies to be able to do the road projects came from the contractors through a direct finance construct. They raised the monies. We gave them the standards to build. We provided the oversight. There was no debt burden to the country. There was a moratorium of 2 years for repayments. We only had to pay interest. And the interest rates were capped at 5.5%. So it was a very clever way. And not only that, we knew that we had a window where there was a minimum amount of economic activity, meaning there was less traffic. Go and fix the roads. And you created jobs, and it worked. You come in, you want to go and stop all the projects and want to blame everybody and talk about corruption. So the same contract that was used for Fresh Start was used for everybody else. But the contract was bad for Fresh Start and good for everybody else? How does that make sense? The same people that were providing the oversight of Fresh Start were the same people that were providing the oversight of Nationwide and of Renault. How can it be only a flawed for one company? How? And we all want to believe that? Oh, Chastanet went and took money, and instead of helping the people, we found intelligent and smart ways to recover the economy. We made the decision, coexist with COVID, reopen the borders. We did that. St. Lucia had more tourism arrivals in 2021 than Barbados. Today, the 2 flights a day we had from Miami on American, where are they? But yet Barbados has 3 now. The multiple flights that we had from Newark and out of JFK on American and JetBlue, where are they today? But Barbados has 2 flights a day with JetBlue out of New York. We're the ones who brought United. Now United is going to Barbados and reducing its capacity in St. Lucia. That's the facts. You have a government that wants to go and talk about a jazz festival. I'm all for jazz, but the reality is, the truth is, to spend $14 million on a weekend, or even if you want to make it 2 weekends, makes no sense. And in particular, when that money is not being used to promote our local artists. Look what's going on in Dennery. Who started Dennery Carnival? Dennery segment groups. And today, for cheap politics, the groups are being marginalized and are being told that they have to run their carnival through the town council, who want to do it differently than what they did. And what they're saying, we used to do it by ourselves. All government did is give us some support. And I'm embarrassed to know that the police have denied them the ability to have their carnival because the police are telling them they have to go and work with the council. Come on. And you tell me that you are interested in the young people in this country? Carnival became the largest event in St. Lucia. By whom? United Workers' Party said that the largest festival needs to be Carnival because it's our art form. And the money that you're investing in putting on a party, that you're getting international exposure. So every time that Teddyson or Ricky T or Denry Segment are playing internationally, what does it say? An artist from St. Lucia. I want all of y'all, media people, to go and find out what was the international coverage on the St. Lucia Jazz Festival. Was there any TV coverage? Where were the articles? Where are the promotions? That's what I'm saying to you. The moment the Jazz Festival lost the BET link, it no longer was viable. So the $7 million you lose, how do you justify that? Who were the local artists? In fact, local artists were cut from the program, not promoted. And that's what you want to go and brag about? Where's the strategy? I don't understand. I'm lost. And that's why we said, instead of having one festival over a weekend, have a summer festival. Take the festival and make it into smaller parts. Every 2 weeks, do an event. And so that you know you have activity for the entire summer. So when I'm advertising, when we are advertising, we're advertising for the whole summer. You leave up the stage so you don't have the cost of putting up a stage every single time. And people know that you can come to St. Lucia in the summer. There's always something taking place in St. Lucia. You want to go and, oh, Soleil this and Soleil that? But there's a concept, there's a strategy. What's your strategy? You're going to come back and tell me you're going to make the festival bigger than it was before? You can't even justify what you did this time. You want to make it bigger? And at whose expense? That's the part. All of this being done at taxpayers' expense. Monies that could have been used for many other things. The money that was supposed to be used for marketing St. Lucia. Look what's happening. All the numbers are declining. Airlift is declining. UK market was down 25% in the month of April. I expect that the numbers would have declined out of all markets in the month of May and June. The week of Jazz, they had less arrivals at HIA than in any other week for the year. So explain that to me. And you want to come and tell me that the largest set of arrivals for the Jazz Festival was Americans? How? We all know we're not stupid. Martinique. Because they come over on the ferry. That's where they came from. And do you have to spend $12 million on an event to attract Martinicans to come to St. Lucia? Come on. We used to do, what was that, the beach one we used to do? Mercury Beach. For $500,000. One major band would, and all the Martinicans would be over there. They're dying for entertainment. They love to come to St. Lucia. You don't have to spend $12 million. But that $12 million, they're trying to justify because the question is, who benefited? And more importantly, who did not benefit? And that's what we're seeing with this government. And that's why people are getting upset. Because there's inequity. It's the same people who are benefiting all the time. And small businesses who have construction equipment are being deprived. Farmers are being deprived. Musicians are being deprived of making their living in this country. And again, I tell you, the anger is palatable, it is real, and you may have a majority in the House of 15-2, but in the People's Parliament, I assure you, you are a minority government.
Stated that government doesn't have control over the prices of fuel for consumers to take more on the prices of flour or groceries. Is that a factual statement?
No, it's not a factual statement. It's in fact an ignorant statement for somebody to make, particularly in a person in her position who's aspiring to be a politician. Fact is that the dutiable rate and the excise tax are what government uses to affect the price. But when you don't change the excise tax or you increase the amount of the excise tax, if you don't change or increase the amount of the dutiable rate, then the price goes up. It has a negative impact. So government has a significant role to play at the border as to what it's going to be. We have had examples here where the government of St. Lucia has actually paid the importers of fuel money to bring fuel in. We've been subsidizing rice, flour, and sugar forever. Okay, so That's a grossly inaccurate and irresponsible statement for her to have made. You want to bring up anything else? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you to everyone.